Triggering content warning. This episode discusses mental health and suicide. If you're struggling, please call or text 988 for support.
I just collapsed. Like I woke up one morning and that negative inner voice was like, you are worthless. You just have to kill yourself. Like there is no reason for you to be alive. There is no way you're going to get out of this mistake. And I couldn't believe it. And that was the first time, Amna, that I realized there was something running me, because it was the first time I really heard that voice much louder, and it was saying things I did not agree with. I was shocked at what I was hearing.
Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabbir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together. Today, I have the real pleasure of welcoming Tanya Chernova, a globally recognized speaker, best-selling author, and business coach who has worked with leaders in over 60 countries. She's the co-author of Undermined and delivered a powerful TED Talk titled How the Voice Inside Can Sabotage Your Success. Tanya brings a unique blend of strategy and heart to help high achievers overcome internal barriers and thrive. Welcome to the podcast, Tanya.
Thank you, beautiful. I appreciate being here.
In today's conversation, I want to explore perfectionism, failure, and reimagining success with you. So as we kind of jump right in, I want to begin with a moment that has stayed with me since I first met you at an EO Learning event, and you talked about the other girl. Mm-hmm. Please share with the audience who the other girl has been in your life.
Oh, that other girl. Well, the other girl has been a really interesting concept, because when I was growing up, and I told this story on the TED Talk, but when I was growing up, my mother really wanted to set the highest possible example of excellence for me. And she just didn't want to compare me to my brother. But at the time, it was really, we come from a Eastern European country where it's very highly competitive and the culture is very competitive. So she would always say things like, the other girl would do it faster. I would do something and she'll say, the other girl would do it neater. Oh, the other girl would get 100%. Like it would be that kind of example. And, at the time, I knew she didn't mean it, cruelly, but how can we possibly grow up without literally learning to compare ourselves to other people, right? And I literally had compare-itis, where I just always had this voice in my head that was the other girl. And the other girl is always telling me, do it faster, do it neater, do it harder, do it better, do it more. And it would never, ever, ever be enough. And so no matter how much success I attained or what level I achieved, I could never celebrate my success because I truly felt like I could do it better. And it was so difficult because it's so unfulfilling, because there's no joy, in truly living or doing anything, because you just constantly feel like I was always chasing the next level, the next level, the next level.
Wow. When I heard you talk about that, the entire talk was amazing. The entire workshop was amazing, but it's so funny that when we look back at experiences, what really sticks with us are the stories that somebody shares that are deep and that are vulnerable. So when I heard you speak, I just was so fascinated with this concept. I mean, what a way. And of course, like from a well-meaning place, our parents do this stuff because they want us to be the best, right?
Absolutely.
Then what did you do about the other girl?
I didn't really know that I had this. We grow up and we're not conscious of ourselves, right? We literally are socially conditioned, we're subconsciously conditioned to be and do and, survive and thrive within the confines of our dictated circumstances, So for me, I really was a super achiever. It made me a super achiever. So there was, and my mother, of course, just kept pushing me to do certain things. So when I was younger, I was like the youngest government licensed esthetician, at age 14, coming out of high school. Like I was already in college while I was in high school doing classes. Honestly, I was in university before I was 16. It was just too early, too much, because I just felt like I was constantly behind. And that was the other thing too, is that I was so far ahead. I still felt like I was constantly behind because all I ever did was look at the other examples of people around me thinking, I just need to go faster and further and harder and more, that kind of thing. And I didn't know any different. That was my reality. And so that really took me far in my life. I mean, I can really give a lot of credit to that other girl because she pushed me into places that I would never have gone myself. But it was a negative inner chatter that was constantly like criticizing me and condemning me to doing more, in order to actually feel worthy. And I recognized, later on when I started doing the work, but what happened was that I actually had my own skincare company at one point and it was also in partnership with my mother, who was a dermatologist at the time. And I went on the shopping channels around the world, and I formulated this product. We patented the contraption that we were selling at the time. It was the non-surgical facelift mask. And we were the number one selling product on the shopping channels in the US, in Canada, in England, in Australia. And I traveled everywhere to do this. We created $1 million company in our first year of business.
Wow.
And then I made a mistake when I went out to the UK. They said to me at that point, with the Federal Trade Commission, you can't say this on TV. You can't say that the results are permanent, let's say. I need you to say that they're very temporary. And I'm like, well, who's going to use this and do this if results aren't cumulative? Like I was against my values. So instead of saying things like, and I was 27 at the time, instead of saying things like, let me speak to my accountant, like I was the president at the time, right? So who am I going to speak to? And I just thought, well, I can't do that. And I said no to them rather than just like trying to find a way. And they were like, well, thank you so much for being on the shopping channel all this time. We're going to pack up all your bits and pieces and send you home with $250,000 of inventory. And I was like, oh my God. And I made like a really big mistake. And you know what? Because of the perfectionism and because of all of the, constant harassing that I was doing to myself in terms of doing better, doing smarter, even though I honestly did not know what I was doing. It was like my first time running a company like this. I just collapsed. Like I woke up one morning and that negative inner voice was like, you are worthless. You just have to kill yourself. Like there is no reason for you to be alive. There is no way you're going to get out of this mistake. And I couldn't believe it. And that was the first time, Amna, that I realized there was something running me, because it was the first time I really heard that voice much louder, and it was saying things I did not agree with. I was shocked at what I was hearing. And so, that was a breakdown. That was a breakdown that ultimately led to my conscious breakthrough, because that's when I needed to seek professional help. Like I went to a psychiatrist. My doctor sent me, she was like, oh my God, you have depression. Like that's the thing, is that these negative voices can sap us of our, serotonin, all the endorphins, like all the oxytocin, all the things that we need in order to thrive. It just like drains us of that. And then we wake up one morning and it's just like we're a shell of ourselves, because we finally become that self-fulfilling prophecy. We do feel as worthless as the voice keep telling us we are. Like it's just crazy.
Thank you for sharing that moment with all of us. And I just want to hold space for that and really say, yeah, I see, as I've had these conversations, I see so much veracity in what you're saying, and even my personal struggles with severe self-criticism. And we know that research shows us that perfectionists are up in self-criticism and they're really low in self-compassion. And we think self-compassion is soft. And if there's one thing I hope and wish with the work and the words that I'm trying to spread, is people understand that you have to be your own ally. You cannot have this inner voice. Like there's the outside situation that you're talking about, right? You stood up for yourself. This all happened. But then there was this internal chatter that was happening that really brought you down. You cannot actually be an effective leader with all of that happening in parallel, right? So since you talked about that moment, I'm going to ask the next question, which circles failure and rejection. And whether we expand on this moment, whether we talk about another, you're welcome to share a moment of failure or rejection in your personal or professional life, and kind of how did you move through that experience?
It's a really good question. I would say that was probably one of my most expensive failures. And it was one of the biggest ones I think I've suffered, only just because I was left with so much fallout from that, right? Like I had to repivot the company. I had to reorganize all of the things. And it's like, how did I work through it? None of it was through self-compassion. I can tell you that right now. And it's interesting. I just have to segue into a different story because our well-meaning parents, God bless them, truly, right? I'm a parent now of a soon-to-be 11-year-old. I know I do my best. And there are times where we just fall into patterns of cultural conditioning. But my mother at the time, I remember my very first breakup. I was 18 years old and it was just heartbreaking, like such a feeling of rejection, even though it felt like it was the right thing to do, but I'd never experienced heartbreak before. So my mother heard me crying upstairs and she came up with an egg timer and she said, listen, you're going to realize there is a beginning and end for everything. If you don't learn how to transition, you're going to fail in life, So she's like, okay, you are crying now. You're not going to cry for every man. So she put the egg timer to 10 minutes and then she's like, you are really upset. I'm going to give you 15 minutes. And so she set it to 15, put it outside my door. And she says, when the bell goes ding, right now you have a pity party. Cry it all out. And then when you hear ding, you come out and you live your best life. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's what I did. And I learned how to process my emotions in 15 minutes and then eventually 10 minutes and then eventually 5 minutes. And then eventually, Amna, I just learned not to process my emotions at all. I just learned to stuff them down, into the recesses of my organs where all the diseases start to fester when you don't deal with your emotions. That's what we do. We just stuff it down thinking, I'm okay, I'm going to be fine. Recalculating was my mantra, right? Like a GPS. And I think that after that particular time frame, when I felt that deep sense of rejection and I just thought, oh, I'm never going to find another boyfriend who's ever going to love me, like that idea, I just thought, okay, like I have to live my best life. And that's where I started to realize, okay, you know what? I need a vision for my next life, because if I have to walk out of the room and not be consumed with what I'm feeling, I need to start thinking about what I want next. And that's when I feel like I leaned on strategy, vision, and a person who's very high achieving has a lot of goals. And so I think I solved a lot of my problems by simply setting new goals and then reorienting my emotions in a new direction. But all of those unfelt emotions, all of those unprocessed feelings, first of all, numbed me out to joy as well, right? When I numb out to sadness, I numb out equally to joy. So that's the flip side of numbing out of your emotions. And it made me impossibly uncompassionate to other people. Like I had a women's empowerment company. I still have it. It's called Courageous Living. It's 18 years now with a co-founder, Joanna Andros is my partner in that. And the women would come to these mentor circles and I would just never understand why they would be crying. And eventually I'd be like, stop crying. That's enough. Do you need a timer? And they'd be like, Tanya, that's so mean. And I'm just like, no, it's not. It's really helpful. Like I just honestly, sometimes I think we do things we don't know better. And then like Maya Angelou says, when we know better, we do better. But, really like, how did I manage moments of extreme failure and rejection? I simply numbed them out most of the time, set new goals, and moved forward, right? But that negative inner voice continued to compound all of the messaging. Like I was just never, ever good enough. There was always another girl that was much better, smarter, faster. I found her in every woman that I saw. I literally saw the best in every person. I'm like, oh my God, look how she's amazing. And then I would see myself and just think, adequate, work harder. But you miss out. Like I missed out on a lot of my life, I think, because I was in such a place where I was trying to get somewhere else and be someone else.
When you mentioned that you missed out parts of your life, that just resonated a lot with me in addition to everything else, because there was this moment I'm crying on the floor. And thinking back, I really feel that the toddler times for both my daughters were a blur because I had postpartum depression and I refused to seek help for it. And I was burnt out, all the things happening. And I didn't seek out help because I felt that would be an ultimate admission that I'm not perfect, that I'm not good enough, that it has come down to medications, and those social cultural overtones of being raised in a South Asian household they were very much there. I literally feel that I lost time, and it's a matter of now shifting and being present and recognizing how can I be more mindful and what are the next things that I can do. Going back to what you've mentioned in both of these circumstances with your conversations regarding the other girl, regarding failure and rejection. So now, because there's no way that anyone who is successful has learned how to successfully fail, who has learned to pivot, reframe. Now if failure happens or some sort of rejection happens in life, how do you take it on?
That's a great question. And I think the reframe really happens at the root source. Like, I don't see it as failure or rejection. I just see it as trying. And like all the wonderful inventors before us who tried thousands of times for inventions and finally made the light bulb or the phone or whatever it is, it's like, oh, I found another way it doesn't work. Perfect. So we really process failure as feedback. Failure for me is just feedback. I'm in the process of building, I'm getting feedback from my efforts, and I'm implementing the learning from my feedback. I don't see this rejection as rejection. I see it as protection. And so many of us have heard those wonderful quotes like, God, the universe, where my personal source of higher power ultimately redirects me. You know what? The wonderful thing about moving beyond that negative inner voice that controlled my mind and my life is that now I'm really connected to who I am as a person, my true real self, my authentic self. Like, I always think to myself, what does it mean when people say your authentic self? Like, such a buzzword. And it's the self that is devoid of the criticism. So if I'm not criticizing myself and trying to turn myself into something else or other, if I accept myself for who I am, who am I really? Who am I really when I'm not pretending to be all the things I'm supposed to be in this world? And so in that authenticity, I do really believe that I have a true vision for myself and my life. I know that I have a purpose and a destiny ultimately. And so everything that's happening is always happening for my greater good. 100% of the time, no matter what, unconditionally. I really live in that frame of mind where it's happening for me, not to me. My beliefs create my life. So if I want to shift anything on the outside world, which is literally a mirror of my inner thinking, all I need to do is adjust my thinking and my life starts to shift into position.
You're tapping into awe and wonder and looking at things in such a magnanimous way, which is great to step away from that thought process, which is constantly when we're fighting the war inside of our head, instead of making yourself your ally and really recognizing, I'm going to lean towards gratitude and awe and wonder.
You know what? The most powerful thing I think I realized at one point is that this was a moment in 2000, I want to say 5 or 6, where I saw the movie The Secret. And that was a big kind of phenomenon at the time because it was the big introduction of the law of attraction. And it was like, my beliefs create my life. Oh my gosh, if my thinking has created my life this far, like I know I can shift that. That's easy enough to do. And the other thing too, is when I started to delve into the world of neuroscience, it was just like my wiring. It comes down to just simple wiring. If I can rewire my thoughts and create new neural pathways, then my brain will take that superhighway instead of the old rugged road that I used to go down. And that's why we have I still have that default where, you know what, like when things happen and I do get triggered and something really goes wrong, I absolutely have that pain storm, I call it, of all the negative things. And then what I do is I just use, honestly, one of my best tools, and I teach this all the time, is that we have to get, in order for that conversation not to hijack us and our time, our life, create everything on the outside world as a blur, I write everything down that I'm thinking. I am this and I'm that and all the things. And then I make a line down the page and then I flip it, because we live in duality, right? So for every negative belief I have about myself, there is an equal and, opposite positive belief. And what's great about confirmation bias, the way that I basically think, and then my confirmation bias is that my mind will automatically find what I'm saying is true. I can actually find the truth. For example, I might say something to myself like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't make the right decisions for my business or my life. right? I know what I'm doing. I do make the right decisions for my business and my life. And then if I look at where that's true, I will find infinitely more examples of where that's true than the part that I don't know what I'm doing, because it's such an isolated moment. I may not know what I'm doing this very second, but I know in general, and I have a great track record. You know what I mean? So the moment that I can flip that script and really start thinking in a new direction puts me back on track in that new neural pathway and the new thinking. It really comes down to programming, which is something we actually have control over.
Well said. And I also, I'm working with my clients. I almost forbid the words "I don't know" because I find them so aggravating, whether it's in a social setting, when you ask your child and they just say, "I don't know." Well, who's going to know? Does your stomach hurt? I don't know. I can't know. You have to know. So it's great to shift the vocabulary, because absolutely the words we speak, they matter. All of this is incredibly insightful, and recognizing how can we move past these things. So, Tanya, we have talked about failure, rejection. We talked about the other girl, self-criticism. I want you to take a step back and now look at this entire conversation, as well as your very rich career, which has spanned multiple industries, as you mentioned, from aesthetics to coaching, training, you're author, all these amazing things. How have you navigated all of these transitions now, looking through the lens of a perfectionist?
Right. Great question, honestly. And I just want to actually speak to this "I don't know" comment to make it easier for you. When we say "I don't know," it's actually the buffer room that we think. It's that little circle on the internet that's like turning. And it basically just means that I haven't thought about it yet. Like, I haven't thought about it yet. And then I always ask people, well, if you knew the answer, what would it be? And they come up with it. It's actually kind of amazing. But in terms of perfection is a static state. Perfection, it happens in moments. Like, I will take a picture for, Instagram, and it's a perfect moment. And then the moment I look again, it's over. So perfection happens in static moments. And I do believe that there's that perfect bite of food, or that perfect moment where you hug your kid and it just feels so right. And you're like, oh my God, this is the perfect moment. So I really do believe that perfection happens in these tiny glimpses, but it really hinders evolution, right? Because what's perfect for this moment, for this time frame, for this occasion, is not going to be perfect for the next thing, right? So perfection is one of those things that we have to just allow the moment and then just let it go, because the rest of it is evolving. It's fluid. It's in motion. It gains momentum. And so for me, even though I've had multiple sort of careers, just because I started so early in my careerhood, right? I literally started as a professional in my early teens, but I feel like it's actually all very intermeshed, because when I first started working in the skincare industry, and I worked at the skincare clinic where we had premature aging, eczema, psoriasis, back in the day when it was still the early 90s, when people got stressed, their condition got worse, right? We know that now, that stress exacerbates all the problems that we have in our body. But back then, stress was very fashionable. Oh, I'm so stressed. Oh, good for you. You're so busy. I'm working 7 days a week. Oh my God, you're amazing. Today, you're working 7 days a week. You're an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? So now wellness is fashionable, right? But back then, stress was the big deal. And I remember the clients who would come in and look for creams for eczema, psoriasis, acne, things like that. But when they got stressed, those creams would stop working because their body was in inflammation and self-protection and all the things. And I started to realize, wait a minute, stress for them is very individual. What stresses them doesn't stress me. Why don't we start talking about it differently? And so reframing started even in that clinic. And that's why I took psychology and business in university, because I knew at that time there was a body-mind connection. And then when I worked in France, I moved to France when I was 23 to be an international educator for a really big skincare company that was all about restoring balance, because it was a seaweed-based brand. I really delved a lot into how our mind controls our body and, has that feedback loop. And so, eventually, especially when I had my own breakdown running the skincare company, I recognized that, I've done a lot of work in anti-wrinkle and anti-aging, and I'm happy with my contributions in that realm. Now I really want to step off into the, depths of the mind, because if it's the mind that's controlling the health of our body, the mind that's controlling the outcome of our life, Why wouldn't I want to sit at the driver's seat, of my life and just really study what is the best possible way I can, orient my mindset, and then eventually learn to release somatically all the beliefs that I've stored in my body over time. So that's how I've gotten myself into now, the mind work that I do today. It was really like a progression. And, where perfectionism still has me trapped is, I obviously want to, like, I have a really great new online program that's amazing, but the landing page, Amna, could be more perfect. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, everything could be more perfect. And all that does is create delay. And I've really learned that there are windows of opportunity that do open and they do close. And this notion that it can always be better, be better, you can do better. The minute I hear that, I'm like, no, Tanya, you know what? The time is now. And so what I really prioritize over perfectionism is simply relevance. Relevance, Amna. Is now the time? If now is the time to stand up and give a toast, right? To go out in a networking session and introduce myself. All those things, like, I really give in to the relevance and the timeliness of the moment that I'm given. And it's something that echoed something that you said, is that when we get out of our head, then we can get into the present moment. And when we're in the present moment, we feel like there's this click. And I feel like I'm on literally a track that's now running with me. And I just allow myself to go through the smoothness of the motions and flow rather than this hustle. I'm in a state of flow. And then I just continuously let go. I'm like, where someone says, you are amazing. I'm like, I'm going to choose to believe that. I just say it. I'm going to choose to believe you. I'm going to choose to believe that this was as effective as you say, because the part of me that believes it could be better is still in there somewhere, but I have to override her by saying, I'm going to choose to believe that that's the truth.
So many pearls in there. Perfection is a static state. That's the first I've heard in all the interviews I've done. And really, that is such an interesting concept. And absolutely, I see that perfectionism and perfectionistic striving really take away from the moment, because you're analyzing and you're cross-analyzing, and absolutely stops you from going and doing the thing. And we'll talk about your landing page. I know it's perfect already. I want you to imagine this younger self, your younger self, at the beginning of her career, at the age of 14.
Wow.
Or younger,
Yes, exactly.
We started, we're young. And you'll look at her, what advice would you give her?
It's always like that question always lands at the 18-year-old self. And I'm always telling her, build your network sooner, but not from a business perspective. I would say at 14, my goodness, girl, look in the mirror and tell yourself you love yourself. Look in the mirror. I think that one of the things that perfectionism and the other girl concept is, when we look in the mirror, it's kind of like, ugh, I can't even. Like, I know so many women who look, because I worked in the beauty industry for so long, so many women have a very negative relationship with themselves in the mirror. And we see our flaws first. And we look at other people and think, I want a nose like that. I used to sleep with tape on my nose, from my nose to my forehead, because I really wanted a nose like the other girl. Nuts, right? So I would tell myself, like, learn to speak to yourself kindly and do it in the mirror so that you actually can see and hear your own eyes. Like, fall in love with yourself. Fall in love with yourself. That's the first love story that you have to have. Don't wait till you're 18 to fall in love with a boy. Fall in love with yourself first. That's probably one of the most important things we can do, because that's something we can do at any age. What I've learned is, when you apply love to any situation, it makes everything better. Love makes everything better. So you know what? There's only good that come out of it.
Thank you for sharing that, Tanya. What came out for me with that comment when you talked about your nose journey was the intense, I never talked about it on air before, but this very intense body hate that I went through after having my children. Now, I know I'm not the only one.
All of us.
But to the point where I would not look at the mirror. And I actually never talk about what I call my healthy weight journey, because I find that there's somebody listening out there who's going to get triggered by it, because I only made one post at the end of 2023, I believe, where I talked about my weight loss journey and all the things. I made that reel to honor a part of me earlier that wanted to show and talk about hard work and grit. And I put so much verbiage in there that although it is a 30-second transformation that you're seeing, it was years in the making, years in the making. And yet these days we will have the hate and we'll look at someone's highlight reel and we want to instantly get there.
Yep. I want that. I'll never get that. I hate myself for not being that. And that's the thing I would say. It's like I would hate myself for not being what I felt was perfect or right or better. That's where my default was, is like I would just hate myself. So I think going back to that question about what is my greatest rejection, I'm just like, I think it's me rejecting myself was probably the most painful rejection, because it just made me really feel like I did not belong and I was not lovable or worthy. And there's 7 subconscious beliefs that sabotage our life. And I feel like that really compounds all of them, our relationship with ourselves. And I love what you're saying about the healthy weight journey and what it really takes to start becoming your own best friend, becoming your own ally. And this is where I think what I've learned to do is love myself into doing things. So a year ago, I had this list in terms of why do I work out? I work out not to gain weight. I work out not to get old. I work out. Most of it was not to, right? And I'm thinking, not one of these is a good reason. Like, that's not a good reason. That's for me avoiding pain, but not moving towards pleasure. So working out would always be this just like, oh my God, the worst of 2 evils, getting old or working out. And now I just think, no, you know what, Tanya, I love you enough to want to move your body. I love you. I love you enough to take care of you. I love you enough to take these vitamins. I love you enough to take this green drink. And now I make choices because I love myself enough to do it. And that is for me a huge sense of liberation, because again, I'm not doing it in order to be someone else or something else that's a better version of me. I'm loving myself into the next moment of my life. And I really do believe that love conquers all. And that loving relationship is what I'm going to be on my deathbed for and say, we used to have this exercise in Courageous Living in session 4 of the Raw Courage coaching program. And it's basically like, you're on your deathbed now. What do you regret that you never did? And one of my big ones was, I regret my life because I never learned to love and accept myself. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like that's my number one goal in life. Learn to love and accept myself for who I am. And then it creates peace. And from the energy of peace, change can begin. Otherwise, we're just chaotically just trying to fix it, hack it, machete it. And I used to say to my girlfriend, I can always tell how angry I am based on how much bronzer or blush I'm wearing that day, because you're like in your makeup, fix it. Like you're this crazy person. And I'm like, okay, Tanya, relax. Stop trying to fix it all, girl. It's all good. That's where I think like those healthy conversations have to happen with ourselves, because it's so easy to get worked up and be angry. And that anger transitions into our body and it creates accelerated aging. I choose wellness. That's what I choose today.
Only good things can come from loving yourself. Love conquers all. Those are powerful statements. As we wrap up for today, Tanya, thank you so much for your time. And please share with our audience, how can they learn more about you? I encourage everyone to go see your TEDx. It's an amazing talk. Tell us all the details.
Thank you so much. Listen, you can always connect with me directly at tanyachernova.com. I love hearing from you. If anything resonates with you, or if there's any way I can support, I have a huge network of people too. And my website is tanyachernova.com, Tanya. And the TED Talk, you know what? I can tell you honestly, Amna, there was a part of me, this was done in Cairo, Egypt. I stood on that TED stage and it was a very difficult talk to give because it was a very personal story and it was the transformation. I swear to you, I looked back and it's as if I left my placenta, my chrysalis on that stage, because I felt like I rebirthed myself even into a new level. I feel like when we tell our stories and have these very insightful conversations that you are expertly leading in this session today, we can then look at those stories and realize, oh my gosh, that's a page in my previous chapter. I don't have to be that anymore. We can let that go and move even higher. It's almost like your hot air balloon. You're cutting the sandbags off, right? Just by allowing yourself to release those stories, which were so good. And it's called Breaking the Cycle of Self-Sabotage, Tanya Chernova TEDx.
You might believe you don't have the time or energy to focus on yourself, but this is exactly the right time to get serious about your well-being. You don't have to do it all alone. I'm here to help. If you enjoyed this video and are ready to take the next step, head over to dramnashabir.com where you'll find free resources you can access right away. The website link is below. Let's get started on your path to thriving. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Just a quick reminder, while I am a physician, I'm not your physician, and nothing in this podcast is medical advice or any kind of professional advice. Everything shared here is based on my personal experiences, and the views expressed are entirely my own. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to rate, review, subscribe, and share the show with anyone who might need a little inspiration to redefine their own version of success. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep reimagining success one small step at a time.